What you're about to see here is perhaps the easiest 200,000 damage I've ever walked into. And maybe that's not a surprise now that you see the ship we're playing, the legendary tier German battleship Preußen. A ship that has obtained quite a reputation since its release as a campaign reward a couple updates ago. This is an ultra accurate German battleship. Sounds a bit like a contradiction in terms because German battleships, generally speaking, are not known for the pinpoint accuracy of their main battery guns, except for this one. And this one just so happens to have the second largest guns in the game at 457 millimeters, or 18-inch guns, not quite as large as Yamato's 460 millimeters, and lacking the overmatch threshold of those guns. Yamato infamously can overmatch 32 millimeter plating, which is a common value at the high tiers for things like battleship bows and sterns. But Preußen, on the other hand, with its 457 millimeter guns, can only overmatch 30. Another more and more common value as time goes on, but mostly for cruiser armor schemes. And on this flank, we really aren't going to come across a cruiser that has a lot of 30 millimeter plating. If memory serves me correct, there will be one Des Moines, which does have, I believe, a 30 millimeter deck plate, but everywhere else is 27. And so he's not a really good example of these guns using their overmatch potential. But what we will see on this flank is three separate ships that, spoiler alert, we will end up sinking. And I think that is down to the ultra accuracy of Preußen's main battery. And of course, we have a very quick reload on these guns as well. I believe with this build, which is a flammable cannoneer build using Azerlane Prinz Heinrich, I believe our reload is 21 or 22 seconds. Now, I'm aware that you can buff that to more absurd levels and get a sub 20-second reload on this battleship, essentially turning it into an ultra heavy cruiser or something like that. But in order to achieve such a reduction in reload, you would have to utilize the brawler skill on one of the German battleship commanders, and that's not really a trade that I want to make. The brawler skill, of course, cuts down the main battery range by 10%, and I don't want to have range reduced quite that much because the Preußen can do two things very well, and this usually isn't true of too many battleships. It can snipe at longer ranges and reliably get good damage if you aim properly. I don't think we correctly accounted for the Des Moines turn there, so we mostly miss. But if you aim properly, well, you saw that salvo, the initial one against the slightly angled Yamato that did 14,000 damage. These guns are reliable, and the quick reload at 21-22 seconds is more than enough. But then in situations where you've got, let's say, the enemy team somewhat cleared out, and you have the opportunity to push, well, you can do so very safely in a German battleship that has an armor scheme remarkably reminiscent of the Grosse Kurfürst, the other legendary tier German battleship with 12 16-inch guns. That ship has worse firing angles, I suppose, on the guns than this one does, and it is nowhere near as accurate, but it is fairly tanky if you get it into the right scenarios, and Preußen can be the same thing. It's not very often in World of Warships Legends that you get a battleship that can be effective at both long range because of ultra accurate main battery guns, and also effective at close range because of great armor that allows for brawling. Now, of course, we're never going to get ourselves into a brawling scenario in our current position. We've opened up this game quite passively, which is my usual MO, I suppose, and at this point it's clear that the only ships on this flank are the Des Moines, the Yamato, and the Montana. Now, we don't want to just push straight into all three of them. If we do, we're going to get focused, and if we go to the wrong place, we're also going to get crossfired. What we need to do is eliminate a little bit of the threat here before we can push. And if we can, say, take out the Des Moines, maybe reduce the Yamato to almost no HP, or sink him, and then just make it a 1v1 versus Montana or something like that, well, then we're going to be in pretty good shape because the rest of the enemy team is far away from this side of the map. I think there's a couple of them in the center, north of the Bravo cap, but ultimately they're going to be congregating somewhere between Alpha and Bravo and never really come to this side of the map. Meanwhile, the blue team has managed to secure Alpha, and we've got 3 battleships sitting right next to each other, reversed from the Alpha cap. Eventually, they're going to push in, but I don't think you want to put your battleships all in the same grid square as each other. We'll see an example of why a little bit later. But at this point, I've realized that we have a friendly battleship somewhere behind us, and what we really ought to do, given he's going toward the map border right now, is we ought to sail in the opposite direction so that we can spread out from him, and ideally, we can get either the Yamato or the Montana or both trapped between both of our guns from different angles so that they have to choose who they angle against and potentially give broadside to the other person. That is the basic idea or the basic concept behind creating crossfires. That wasn't necessary for taking out the Des Moines. He goes down as our first kill of the game when the salvo from our guns finds his citadel. And now Yamato has been reduced to very low health. Not exactly sure how that happened. And I think he's going to be getting a heal off here. We get the front guns into his superstructure for not a lot of damage. But once we turn and get the rear turrets on target and have the front guns reloaded, what we can do, thanks to the great accuracy on this battleship, is we can really dial in the aim for the superstructure. So even as the Yamato heals, and even as he sends a salvo at our slightly angled bow and shaves off 10k, well, he's not gonna have a lot of fun once these shells make contact. They're just too accurate. They go right into his superstructure. They do like 11k, which is as much HP as he had left, and he goes back to port. And just like that, both of the Montana's assistants on this flank are eliminated, and we get the kills on both. Now, of course, we did have help from the friendly cruiser and the friendly battleship. They certainly did some work on shaving down the Yamato's HP specifically. So it's not like this was done single-handedly. But at what point in this entire sequence did we ever have to worry about anything? Pretty much never. The worst that could have happened to us is Des Moines could have focused us a little bit more, and probably he could have done a lot of damage if we weren't able to sink him quickly, just due to fires and things like that. But ultimately, I don't feel like you have too much to worry about in the Preußen. And now that the BA Montana is the only ship left alive, and at this point, the rest of the enemy team is definitely on the complete other side of the map, well, it's basically a 1v1, but not even. It's certainly not a fair 1v1. We've still got that battleship who has taken up our position on the map border, and if we continue on this path, it depends on what BA Montana does, but we are far enough away from our friendly battleship that if he, turns to the left of the screen, let's say, well then he's probably going to be giving broadside to the location of our friendly battleship on the map border in order to angle against our guns a little bit, and that's going to catch him in a crossfire. It's not going to materialize, unfortunately, because I think there is an island on this map separating the friendly battleship from the BA Montana, but he is turning in this direction. Who knows what he's shooting at? I'm right in front of his face, but he doesn't seem too interested in me. And the first salvo against his slightly angled hull, not great, but the secondaries, which we haven't built into at all, are beginning to open up. And I suppose on the Preußen you could build into the secondaries, but I don't know why you would. You'd have to give up some sort of accuracy on the main battery guns in order to do that. And, we've still got that German armor scheme with the turtleback that allows us to be effective in brawling scenarios like this. So if we're already within 3-4 kilometers of a battleship near the end of the match trying to brawl, well, the secondaries are still going to shoot anyway, and as you can see, they do penetrate the Montana, deal damage and light fires. It's just unfortunate we don't get a citadel there with the front 2 turrets. That's 4 shells for 20,000 damage. If one of them had fallen a bit lower, or perhaps if we had aimed a little bit lower, that might have been critical damage and Montana might already be sunk, but he's not. He's managed to turn all the way around, and assumed a kiting position, which, you can see it's effective if we don't aim properly. 4 ricochets there against his stern. We got to raise the gun elevation a little bit to get that into his superstructure. But the friendly cruiser that initially took this Charlie cap for us is raining down HE Hellfire upon him to go along with the secondaries, which just lit another fire. So he's in big trouble, and even though he can chunk us with his AP, he's not going to really be citadeling us either. So no problem there. That's our 3rd kill of the game. 149,000 damage done. All that's left is the enemy destroyer and an enemy battleship and cruiser, the latter of whom were spotted over there, north of the Alpha Cap, sort of reverse bow tanking it. And of course, that means they're giving broadside to our position. Again, another example of spreading battleships out. Obviously, we're not in communication with the other flank, but they are directly in front of that GK. He's trying to bow tank them, which means he's giving broadside to this portion of the map. And if we can occupy this portion of the map, we can access that broadside and deal a lot of damage. GK is now in an unfavorable position where he realizes he's got an angle against this part of the map, so you can see he's turning a little bit as he reverses. But it's not enough. 20,000 from all the way on the other side of the map could have been better if we landed more than 4 shells, but 4 shells on Preußen is pretty potent. The blue team is about to hit 1,000 points. Last remaining enemy DD has managed to enter the Bravo cap. And, well, another salvo out at the GK. We're still accruing points from both Alpha and Charlie. Even if they do contest Bravo, not going to matter. We're going to hit 1,000 points here shortly. And I suppose you could say this game is sort of the inverse of one that I posted in the Catalunya last week, where the blue team captured the majority of the capture circles and then pushed into the enemies and sunk. Generally speaking, you don't want to do that, but most of the stuff in this game is not black and white. There are general principles, general guidelines that you want to follow, but the specifics of each game is going to vary. And sometimes you can push straight into the enemy spawn and have success like we did in this one, walking into 210,000 damage, sinking 3 ships, and getting 2,500 base XP. So, Preußen, very good ship, but potentially an overpowered one. A bit accurate on the main battery guns, very short reload, and an excellent armor scheme that allows for brawling, despite the fact that because of the accuracy and efficacy of the guns, you can be excellent at long range. Not too many ships can make that claim. So yeah, if you are struggling in the game and you find yourself getting bad matches over and over again like I did last night, why not try the Preußen? It's a very reliable ship for getting good games. Hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.